Brexit will destroy Labour and keep Jeremy Corbyn out of power, warns Professor. Brexit will divide the Labour Party and cracks have already begun to show, a professor has warned. They look vulnerable. Jeremy Corbyn's Brexit position will destroy Labour, says Professor. Brexit could split the vulnerable-looking Labour Party with the leader not being able to keep the party together. Matthew Goodwin, a professor of politics and international relations at Kent University, has claimed that Brexit could lead to the demise of the Labour Party. Mr. Goodwin argued Jeremy Corbyn would struggle to keep different groups in Labour together as the government continues to negotiate Brexit with the EU. Speaking exclusively to Express.co.uk, Mr. Goodwin said, "I think if you look at the opinion polls and the surveys, there's little evidence that Labour yet are losing support, but what I would say is the Labour coalition looks vulnerable. You have essentially got a coalition that rests on Battersea and Doncaster, hardcore Remainers versus hardcore Leavers. One seat voted overwhelmingly to stay in Europe, the other voted overwhelmingly to leave. That coalition over the longer term, to me at least, looks largely unsustainable." The professor claimed Jeremy Corbyn had played a good hand so far in discussing the Brexit issue, but it would soon catch up with him. Jeremy Corbyn has played a good hand in a way by fudging his response to Brexit, by not releasing too much detail, accepting the decision but not really outlining what kind of deal he wants other than talking in vague terms about keeping us as close to the European economy as possible. I look at the Labour coalition and I do wonder how sustainable that is over the longer term. The professor referred to social democrat parties in Europe and insisted that they too were struggling to retain support from voters. Mr. Goodwin said the Labour Party were still quite some way behind the Conservatives and Brexit could be the major issue that ultimately keeps Mr. Corbyn away from power. He said, "The Labour Party is something of an outlier in that it held up support in the last election, still 64 seats short of a majority, but the big strategic question I would ask Jeremy Corbyn is how are you going to keep these groups together? How are you going to keep the 65-year-old blue-collar, working-class voter in Sunderland, together with the 20-year-old pro-Remain Liberal Labour voter in Hackney? This is the big strategic dilemma for Jeremy Corbyn." The Labour Party leader is currently holding rallies in Scotland as he tries to drum up support for the party. Mr. Corbyn has been heavily criticised for not clearly outlining the party's Brexit position in the lead-up to the election, despite insisting that the UK would be leaving the single market and customs union under his leadership. Cracks in the party emerged after Chuka Umare's failed amendment to the Queen's speech, which would have kept the UK in the single market and customs union after Brexit. Labour politicians were told to abstain from the vote, but 50 MPs defied Mr. Corbyn to support the motion, which was overwhelmingly rejected. Theresa May clearly outlined the government's Brexit position as it released papers last week explaining how issues such as the customs union, Irish border and the European Court of Justice would look after the UK has left the European Union. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and don't forget to subscribe English News Hub for new excited videos.